I do want to talk with you for a second about physicalism because I do. It's obviously seems like it's fading away. Like there's atheist philosophers like David Chalmers, or
Yeah.
recently I heard like Felipe Leon isn't a physicalist anymore, or maybe he never was. But people are rescinding away from physicalism. But there's a lot of physicalists out there, especially in like the online community, where we just kind of assume like we have a brain, and then there's consciousness, and it's just kind of like consciousness can emerge from a brain through maybe like evolution or some other process. So what are some of the like main issues that you see with physicalism in terms of like philosophy of mind?
Well, first of all, to say something emerges is not an explanation. It's actually just a name for the thing that needs to be explained. So when you say, well, it just emerges, well, the question is, how could it have done such?
Yeah.
Well, it just, just saying it's emergent is just amounts to saying it just did, and that's all. Well, that is not that's not an argument. It's just a name for the problem. But there are a whole cottage industry of different versions of physicalism. But what they all leave out when we're speaking about consciousness is that physical states, brain states, don't have the same properties as conscious states do. For example, like I said, conscious states have a sentience or a qualia or a what it's like to them, but there's no material state that has a what it's like to be a quark or what it's like to be negative charge. It's not even intelligible. Most mental states have what's called intentionality. They're of or about something. So I have a sensation of the lamp, a thought about London, a belief about multiplication, a desire about or for ice cream, and so on. But no brain state is about anything. Brain states can't be true or false, but conscious thoughts and beliefs can. Again, thoughts don't have geometrical properties. I mean, a thought doesn't have a size and a shape. I don't know what sense it makes to say, is your thought that 2 and 2 is 4 bigger than your thought that cats are mammals? And is it closer to your left ear or right ear? Where is it? There's a category fallacy going on there. This is wrong category. But the brain state that's associated with that does have a geometrical shape and location. So there are all kinds of things that consciousness has that brain states don't. And so my conscious states just can't be reduced in one way or another to brain states or body movements or what have you. So I would say the reason that people are misled about this is that the real issues about what is consciousness and what possesses consciousness are not scientific, but they're philosophical. And they have the idea that somehow neuroscience has pretty heavily weighed in on the fact that we are our brains and consciousness is just a brain state of some kind. But that's just obviously false. And here's why. I was invited a few years ago by a research biologist I did not know to give a lecture at the National Institute of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. And I spoke to about 130 neuroscientists and biologists and scientific researchers. And I argued that neuroscience does a good job of establishing correlations between mental and brain states and dependency relationships, so that if something happens to my brain, I can't have a memory, let's say. But when it comes to the question of what is consciousness and what has it, neuroscience cannot comment on that because those are not scientific questions. And to illustrate it, I did the following. We know that mirror neurons are associated with our ability to feel empathy. So that if your mirror neurons are firing in your brain, you can feel empathy. If they're damaged, you can't. All right, now how do you explain that? How does damage in the mirror neurons keep us from being able to feel empathy? Well, there are three empirically equivalent explanations. By empirically equivalent, I mean that they're consistent with exactly the same set of observational data. There's not one observation that favors one of these three over the other. They are equivalent with all and only the same observational data. The first one is what we might call strict or type identity physicalism, and that's the idea that the feeling of empathy is identical to, or nothing more or less than, the firing of mirror neurons. That's theory number one. Theory number two says, no, this is called property dualism. No, that's not true. A feeling of empathy has a what it's like to it, and it's about someone, and the firing of mirror neurons aren't that way. But there's a cause-effect relationship between the two, so that the firing of a mirror neuron causes the feeling of empathy, and if the mirror neurons don't fire, you can't have that. The cause is absent, so you won't experience the effect. Now, both the firing of mirror neurons and the feeling of empathy, though, occur in the brain. The third hypothesis is that the firing of mirror neurons take place in the brain. A feeling of empathy takes place in the self or the I or the ego or soul, and there is a cause-effect relationship between brain and soul, so that if your neurons won't fire in the brain, that has a causal effect on the soul's ability to feel empathy. Now, neuroscience can say nothing about which of those three is true. It just can't comment on it. It's a metaphysical dispute. And I think there are a number of reasons to believe the third option rather than the others. So in summary, I think a lot of people are misled by pop media and comments that neuroscientists have done A, B, and C, when the fact of the matter is most people in my field that are professional philosophers know that's not the case.